Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this next interview. Ukraine's war effort is entering a new phase. Military aid, peace talks, and high-stakes diplomacy are all in motion. President Zelensky's meeting with Donald Trump in Washington revived talks of a potential summit with Russia, while European leaders push for new security guarantees. What does this mean for Ukraine and for Poland's role on NATO's eastern flank? Joining us on TVP World is Mark Toth, U.S. National Security and Foreign Policy Analyst. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Great to see you, Benjamin. Thank you.
So I'm really hoping to get your breakdown on the Zelensky-Trump meeting in Washington. Did anything in particular stood out to you? And do you think there's any real breakthrough, or is it mostly just optics?
Yeah, in terms of optics, it went better than I had anticipated. I was asked to do a Ukrainian TV news broadcast just before it, and we were fearful of what it might look like, that it could be a repeat of what we saw in the Oval Office several months back, but it wasn't. The body language of Zelensky was good. He looked relaxed. It looked like he hadn't taken a beating. And there were reports that Trump had even hugged him at the end of it. So I think that was good. So from that standpoint, it went as well as it could be, right? But the actions that come out of it are what will matter next in terms of how we assess it. But we're still learning a little bit about those, and we don't have enough clarity yet to determine one way or the other.
Now, do you think the presence of European leaders would shape the tone and substance of the talks?
Benjamin, exactly. It did, I suspect. I think it provided a united front. Europe was certainly sending some messages there, saying, look, we're united. We're not going to stand for Russian aggression in Eastern Europe, and we're not going to look look past and see Ukraine thrown to the wolves and basically forced into some type of capitulation. So the fact that they were all there standing shoulder to shoulder with Zelensky as he met with Trump, I think was key and essential. That's a good show on the part of Europe.
And, well, Trump has set this 2-week deadline for progress. What's behind that, and how seriously should we take this new deadline that has been established?
Yeah, Benjamin, I think that's a million-dollar question. I think if we sit back and look at this, I don't think Trump knows how to proceed yet. He clearly knows that Alaska didn't go well. He also knows that Europe is trying to box him in terms of what took place with the Zelensky summit in the Oval Office after that. And he's looking how to tack forward. He wanted a peace deal. In his mind, if we believe the reports that are out there, it involves Ukraine ceding territory, Crimea for sure, potentially the Donbass, along with that key and vital fortress belt that has stopped Russian aggression from moving further westward. And he knows it's not going to fly at this point. So I don't think he knows what to do. He's kind of in a holding pattern. So this 2 weeks, I think, is going to be like any other 2 weeks. It's just a pause for Trump. But I think the bigger takeaway from it is it gives and buys Putin more time. And time isn't good for Ukraine right now in terms of the horrific, battles that are being fought, human cost-wise, along the battlefront in the Donbass.
Right. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has proposed a lot of what's essentially impossible requests when it comes to agreeing to even just meet, not even like agreeing to anything, but the kind of precondition to even meet is to meet these standards. Do you think that Russia is just trying to stall this out and Trump is essentially trying to square a circle here?
Right. Benjamin, in effect, you answered your own question because the answer is yes. What Russia we're seeing out of them is simply maximalist demands all over again. And nothing has changed. Alaska didn't, I tweeted this a while back, Alaska didn't change anything. We're still where we are at. Russia is determined as ever to take all of Ukraine one way or the other, either at the negotiating table or ultimately on the battlefield. And simply what we're seeing here is Russia slowly rolls back each of the things that Trump thought he had accomplished in Alaska. We're seeing that just once again, he was playing for time, Putin tapping Trump out. Nothing's changed here. Russia continues to be maximalist in its position, which ironically is not reflective of its strength on the battlefield. Trump holds all the cards, but inexplicably, he won't play them. And that's just giving Russia and Putin oxygen when they really aren't deserving of it. They could be put down for the count if Trump were to act.
Right. Like I mentioned, Trump is essentially kind of also at an impasse here in terms of what to do. But at the same time, again, like you mentioned, he does hold all the cards. So what is kind of holding him back from actually using it?
Right. I think it goes back to a deep divide within his administration. You have the pro-Ukraine group that's out front. Some people might call them neocons. They're really not. They believe that European security is tantamount and equal to U.S. security and vice versa. And so they want to see Russia stopped in Ukraine. But then you have a group led by Elbridge Colby, who's an undersecretary of defense at the Pentagon, who basically is arguing that we have to come to some kind of a settlement accommodation with Putin so that the U.S. can then focus on the Indo-Pacific and the threats that China increasingly is posing there. But I think there's a little bit of fool's gold on Elbridge's part. In reality, the two are related, and you can't turn if you're being faced down by two murderers, two guys coming at you with a knife from the front and the back, you simply can't pivot and fight one and pretend the other's not there. Both are there, and I think that's the approach that the U.S. needs to be taking. They've got to do both. So from that standpoint, that's why you're seeing the delay here with Trump. I think it's this internal division that's happening. People like Marco Rubio, even the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, all of those see Russia as an imminent threat. And so hopefully they're holding Trump's feet to the fire there. But on the Pentagon side, deep within its walls between Heska and Elbridge Colby, those two are trying to save China. So that's why you're seeing this pause.
All right. Meanwhile, people are also saying that, well, it's time for Europe to step up and take its defense into its own hands and guarantee Ukraine's security. But we're also seeing a lot of different narratives when it comes to the decision makers and the leaders in Europe. The German foreign minister said on a podcast that they cannot put boots on Ukraine because they've already have troops in Latvia, and as well as NATO leaders saying that, well, foreign boots on the ground is still not within consideration. Do you think that the hesitation there is also going to become a hindrance when it comes to actually achieving anything substantial?
It could be, Benjamin, and I think this may be the most important question for your viewers that you've asked so far in terms of Eastern Europe and the long-term security of Europe. Europe needs to step up. Look, my country's not doing enough. It could put Putin down for the count, and it's not. In my mind, Europe needs to become more maximalist in its own positions in order to counter Russia. So that means more ammo. That means more air defense. That means even maybe something as bold as a no-fly zone in Western Ukraine. They need to be signaling to Putin that, hey, we're going to change your cost calculus in terms of what it costs you to take Ukraine, even if Washington isn't willing to do that. I fear, though, that we're not there. As you rightly pointed out, there's differing opinions in terms of what a peace looks like, which means there's often differing opinions as to how you get to that peace. And I think that's troubling because if we go back to some of the wording that surrounded the summit with Zelenskyy and the European leaders in the White House, the devil's in the details. And as I mentioned on Ukrainian TV, the devil is also in the wordsmithing. And what I'm hearing out of European leaders at a surface level is good, that they're not going to allow Ukraine to give up territory by force. What I didn't hear, and this is significant, is we didn't hear that they're not against Ukraine giving up territory voluntarily. And so I think that's what they're pivoting to. So while they're trying to appear strong from a messaging standpoint to domestic audiences and saying the Russians aren't going to get anything by force, I think the Europeans are, unfortunately tacking towards Trump's position that Ukraine is going to have to give up parts of Ukraine, definitely Crimea, and potentially, huge swaths of the Donbass. And in my mind, both of those would be foolhardy.
All right, that's a very interesting read there. Like I said, the devil is in the details indeed. Now, speaking of European security as well as NATO, Ukraine is, well, there's also talks about Ukrainians receiving a sort of a NATO-style security guarantee without a full membership. How would that affect Poland's defense posture or any other Ukraine's allies?
Yeah, Benjamin, this is a great strategic question by you because it really presents a novel situation here. If you do indeed give an Article 5-like guarantee to Ukraine, presumably that's coming from Eastern Europe for sure, the rest of Europe, and in some form or the other, the U.S. What happens if a skirmish breaks out? For instance, Poland gets involved in enforcing part of this Article 5-like security guarantees. When does the actual Article 5 of NATO kick in? Because Poland is now involved as part of this Article-like 5 security guarantee or action that might take place. So I think separating the two is going to be difficult. I think they're probably wedded together, whether people realize that or not. And so getting there might be a good thing, but it's also going to be a dangerous path because it certainly, in my mind, you could see the potential that if Poland or Romania or the Baltic states or Finland were somehow dragged into this to enforce the Article 5, like even on a minor scale, at what point in time does that trigger NATO's Article 5, where those countries that are involved could say, look, we feel that we're exposed here in imposing the consequences of an Article 5-like action, and that we now need the rest of NATO to kick in under the terms and auspices of Article 5. So this is definitely something to be paying attention to because it could be explosive.
Right, definitely. It's something that still needs to definitely be unpacked. Where is to draw the line, essentially. Now, going back to Poland, it does we have played a critical role when it comes to supporting Ukraine's war effort. Do you think that it would translate into influence inside the EU and NATO with providing the security guarantee and kind of sort of shift the power balance within NATO countries as well?
It should, because in my mind, as we go through this period of history, Poland is becoming the new West Germany of this Cold War. If you think about West Germany being on that forward line, the leading line that was facing down the East Germans with the rest of the Soviet Union behind them, Poland is now, along with the Baltic states and Finland, you're becoming that new front line, and Ukraine's already there, or I would have added it. So from that standpoint, your influence needs to grow. I mean, in terms of protecting Polish national interests, to ensure Polish national security, you have to have that position. And I think, if I'm your leadership, I'm kind of looking at the model that Israel took in terms of developing its own defense industries as a means of ensuring that you have that kind of influence that you suggested. You're already doing that, the investment, the $90 billion or so in a drone factory. There's so much that can be learned in this new era of modern warfare from what's going on in Ukraine that Poland can capitalize on that and build its own industries around it, its own defense industries around it. And if they do that, then they're going to have more influence in terms of the type of weapons that the EU ultimately adapts for itself and what this $850 billion that has been targeted for defense spending over the next 4 to 5 years by EU member states, in addition to their normal amounts, all of that could inure to the benefit of Poland. But absolutely, I do see it as improving Poland's standing throughout Europe, as long as your leaders seize the opportunity.
Right. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Now, the 2-week deadline clock is counting down. We'll have to see how that develops. But in the meantime, thank you so much for being with us on TVP World.
Always a pleasure, Benjamin. Thank you.
Cheers. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. For more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.